thank you for joining today's CICM webinar hosted by corporate partner Key IVR, who will be taking us through a presentation titled The Real Impact of Payment Fraud. Before I introduce your host for today's session, I'd like to make you aware that during our session, if you have any questions, please feel free to type in the Q&A box on your screen. If they're not answered during the session, we will contact you directly afterwards. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Abby Richardson, Key IVR's Partner Relationship Manager, and Aaron Smith, Technical Account Manager. Good afternoon, Abby and Aaron.
Good afternoon.
Hi, everyone. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining today. Much appreciated. So we're from Key IVR. We are a PCI-compliant payment solutions provider, providing solutions to many businesses across the UK, across America, across Europe, to take payments over the phone and online in a secure manner. So we are a CICM corporate partner and have been for many years, but CICM are also a loyal customer of ours that actually use our phone and web payment solutions in-house themselves. So we're based in Doncaster in South Yorkshire. However, we do have offices in Ireland, also in New York, and also in Moldova. So our solutions are available globally. Okay.
Perfect. So, hi guys, it's Aaron here. So, just to give you a little bit of a background, I've been with the business for 5 years, well over 5 years now, and I've worked with especially Becky, who arranges all the masterclasses with CICM, CICM also being my customer. So, just to give you a little bit of a background as to what we're going to be speaking about today. I know Abby's just done a very brief introduction, but just want to explain the differences between what we see as chargeback fraud and also card payment fraud. So there's massive difference between the two. So card payment fraud is where card details from an individual have been leaked to the outside world and potentially being sold on the black market, and have been used fraudulently by individuals which have made a purchase online. It could be many different purchases. I want to be sure that everyone that's on the webinar today can relate to a scenario where themselves or a friend or they've heard in the news where card details have been leaked and used fraudulently by an individual. So that's what we label that as a card payment fraud. Now, chargeback fraud is completely different. So card payment fraud leads to chargebacks from individuals, but chargeback fraud is an example of, for example, I'm making a purchase online, and how that would work is I would maybe buy some tickets, booking a holiday, purchasing an individual item, and I may receive that item, but then what I can do is I can actually call my bank or go even onto my online banking and then query that transaction and create a chargeback. So essentially I can actually get that purchase free of charge, and that's what we label as chargeback fraud. So throughout this presentation we're going to refer to both different scenarios that we've got here and how you can combat that and how we're combating that currently for existing customers.
Okay, so just to give you guys a bit of a background of the different type of transactions that can happen when taking card payments. We have card present transactions, which are usually in store, face to face with a shop or with a company, and you are presenting your card yourself. So it might be used with a chip and PIN machine where you physically have to enter your card into that terminal, put your PIN number in, but also contactless payments and mobile payments are within that category as well. So card present transactions, you are actually face to face with that business. Card not present transactions are done where you are not physically in person with that business. You might be giving your card details over the phone, online, you might be reading them out to an agent or via an automated service, but you are not putting your PIN number in, so you are not verifying that transaction yourself. So that's the difference between the two. So card holder not present transactions are associated with the most amount of fraud. However, there are ways to minimize the risks involved with that.
Okay, so we're going to be putting this slide around as part of the webinar, but we don't want to bore you too much with statistics, but we've done a little bit of comparisons just to give you everyone a little bit of a background as to, in terms of a monetary value, what's affecting the UK, especially on last year's data that we've collated. So we've got this from UK Finance. So as I'm sure everyone is aware, cash and check payments are drastically declining across all different sectors, whether it be B2B, B2C, and lots of different types of payments now are all being processed by card payments. They're now becoming the more dominant means of taking payments, whether it even be in a face-to-face transaction. You might be on a market, for example, making a purchase. You can now pay by card, where traditionally it was more cash driven. So there's a lot of different types of businesses now which are more cash driven, which is now switching over to card. One of being which is even my window cleaner even takes card payments, which you'd never expect that to happen, but it does. So in terms of figures, so we've got £671.4 million worth of card transactions in terms of turnover was lost by fraudulent transactions last year, and that was a 19% increase from 2017. Now, as card payments tend to dominate lots of different sectors, you would imagine that the increase of fraud and risk to those transactions would increase. Which is correct. It is going to increase because more transactions which are processed in that method, that's bound to happen. However, what myself and Abby are going to talk you through in a second is there's lots of different ways in which we can combat that and things that are changing in the industry to bring that down to an absolute minimum to really crack down and reduce this as a nation as such, with things that are coming in place.
So just to give you an idea of how chargebacks actually affect businesses, a lot of you might be thinking that it's simply the monetary value that the company has lost, but with chargebacks, there's also struggles that companies face, such as the loss of stock. So you might have already sent out the goods before receiving that payment, and it's been charged back before you know it, and you've lost the payment, but you've also lost the product that you were selling. Fees issued by the bank, by your merchant and gateway acquirer, they happen as well. So if you do get a chargeback, you can be hit heavy from fees from these types of businesses too. Obviously, you've got the shipping costs as well from sending goods out. You've got staff's time and staff salary costs to cover as well, which you've lost from that chargeback. So that's just a couple of things we can think of, but just to give you an idea that it's not just the money that you've lost that's been charged back, it's also the process that's happening with making that purchase that you've lost as well.
Okay, so how do we protect against chargebacks? Now, in the industry, especially here at Key IVR, obviously people on the webinar may be able to relate to this, but we use what's called 3D Secure for all online transactions. Now, essentially what this is authentication from your card issuing bank. So, for example, Barclays, NatWest, Santander. When you sign up for a bank account with those providers, the high street banks, what they will do as part of that enrolment is that they will enroll your application as to include 3D Secure. Now, what this is a 3D Secure authentication, the password or authorization code which is submitted by the card holder is the same as having a PIN number. So only the card holder should have that information. So if any transactions are processed through a 3D Secure page when processing payments online, those can't be charged back for fraudulent transactions because only the card holder should have that information. Now, there's different ways in which this can work. So the more traditional way is what you can see on screen, which we've got a screen grab there where you're asked to enter your 6th, 7th and 9th, or is it 8th character of your password. But where we've got American Express, I actually have an Amex card myself for work purposes. They don't do this. They actually send a text message to my phone, and I have to put in an authorization code which is on that text message, which is tied to me. Where people don't have a mobile phone, they can simulate an email with that same authorization code. And in some instances, which I've seen, they actually simulate a telephone call to a landline number, which an automatic voice then reads out that authorization code. So the industry itself has already got processes which they're going through at the moment to try and combat this, but not everybody is aware that these things that exist at the moment.
Okay, so how do we actually secure ECOM transactions and protect them against chargebacks? So you've got a customer, they're making a payment on a web payments page. They might be buying, I might be a builder, and I might be buying some tools, for example. So I'm processing my payment online. I get to the card details section where I enter my card details onto the web payments page. But before my payment's processed, it's actually going to pop up my little bank's box where I've got to might put in my password in, or they might send me a text with that authorization code on, something like that. So you would pop those details into that page there, which then your payment would be processed. And if they matched, that would be successful. And if you got that wrong, for example, that's where the purchase would be declined, because only you would know that particular password for your bank or that authorization code that's been sent to your phone. So just to give you an idea, guys, this isn't just covered by processing a payment on a web page, you go in online. This method of payment can also be accessed through different channels such as email and SMS campaigns. So the customer might receive a text or receive an email with a parameterized link on there to click, and then they would be directed online to take their payment. So you're not having to rely on the customer to actually visit that website off their own back. Could also be done through different methods such as web chat, social messaging, where again the customer would be sent a link to then land on a web page, to then go through the 3D secure process to find out if their payment's been successful or failed. Okay.
So one thing that we're certainly aware of as a company at Key IVR is our core solutions are all payment driven by phone. So we've got different options in where we can now combat chargebacks or assist in combat and chargebacks for fraudulent transactions by putting different rules in place for payments which are taken in a contact center or on an automated payment line. Now, there's many industries that we work with and many customers that we have where they don't offer online payments. They have to be on the phone to process that payment. It may be a holiday company, it may be a debt recovery firm, where certain things have to be confirmed to a customer or certain processes have to be in place, which means that conversation has to happen. Now, traditionally, telephone payments, there's not a great deal of security that you can put around them, but we've got different features that we can put across all our solutions to combat that, which is a mixture of integrations to customer back-end systems and also different options at the gateway, the PSP that you guys will use. So in this particular flow here, we've got an option where we've got a customer and agent having a conversation and the customer is verified. So let's say, for example, we're booking a holiday. It's the first payment I'm going to take and I've got my booking reference there. Now, what we can do as part of that booking reference is when we have a successful payment against that booking reference on the first attempt, we can allow that transaction to go through as a normal MOTO transaction where only limited security is checked. But as a first, for example, deposit payment, what we can do is we can prompt the agent that that card hasn't been authorized by 3D Secure at the first attempt, and we can allow them to process the payment online. There's different options that we have where the agent can actually manually send what we call a click to pay URL that can be sent via SMS or it can be also sent by email. And contained on that notification, there will be a website link which will take them to a pre-filled web page which has the associated references and payment amount for that payment, and they will then be redirected via a 3D Secure page. Now, this will allow the business to ensure that that card is safe. They can't charge that payment back. It's not someone else's card. And then future transactions where they call to maybe pay off part of an installment or a balance, or they add additions onto their booking, they know that if that card is then entered, we can allow that payment to be processed with the customer and agent engaged throughout the whole process. So they then don't have to push them online, but they still keep engaged from start to finish. Another scenario using exactly the same business logic is where we have an automated IVR. So a lot of our customers come to us traditionally for an automated payment line to increase cash flow. So they may be taking payments out of hours when offices are closed. The solution, the automated payment line that we provide, is available 24/7, 365. So it's utilised by a huge number of our clients. And we take the same stance with this. So through an automated process, when the customer identifies themselves, we can trigger a flag if it's a brand new card that's being used against that reference, that it's mandatory that the customer, for the first ever payment that they take on that card, it goes through the most secure means possible. And then any alternative payments in the future, we then know that if that card is used, it has already been authorized by 3D Secure, and we can allow just a normal MOTO transaction to be processed. So we've got two examples of existing customers, one existing customer, Ticketmaster isn't our customer, but Click Energy is, where we've seen different changes being put in place to overcome chargebacks, fraudulent chargebacks, and obviously card fraud leaking out to the outside world. So I'll start with mine first. We'll pass over to Abby for Ticketmaster in a second. But Click Energy is an energy company based in Northern Ireland, which are a customer of mine. And they had a self-service payment IVR, which their customers or tenants would use to top up their gas and lecky on their meters by calling in, putting the reference number in, and making a card payment. Now, they had a sudden spike in chargebacks coming through where card fraud was being used on their IVRs. And as strange as it sounds, the card numbers which were being used were being leaked from other means. So from a different organisation, it might have been in a contact centre, on a website. Card details were being captured by an individual, and this individual were actually selling those card numbers in the pub in Northern Ireland to people who use Click Energy. Now, they were selling these card numbers on, and the people who were buying these card numbers were topping up their gas and electric, paying a very small fee for these card numbers. They were topping up their gas and electric with the unfortunate people whose card numbers were stolen with those cards, and getting the gas and electric for a very small cost, the cost of somebody else. Now, what we did is we provided them with an IVR with different rules in place to crack down on that. So one thing that we did is, against that, we only allowed a card number, so a single card number, to make one payment per day through the IVR. So it can't be used across multiple accounts, because it can just be one card number used. We also introduced through WorldPay, which is who Click Energy use, what we call an AVS check. So as part of that payment authorization, it's mandatory that the house number and postcode digits are submitted as part of that payment request to ensure that they match where that card is registered to. Now, fortunately, we've completely eradicated chargebacks and fraudulent transactions going through, because for one, the individual who was selling these card numbers has been prosecuted. But if it was ever to occur again, by putting the AVS procedure in place, the customers who were making these payments only had the card number, expiry date, and CVC number. So when they were trying to process the payment and we asked for the address, everything then failed as an additional fraud check. So that's a little bit of an idea in terms of how we've helped one customer already who processes payments predominantly by phone, and how we've overcome that. So I'll pass over to Abby to give us a little bit of an update on what Ticketmaster have done.
Yeah, so guys, you might have heard in the news recently about the big data breach that Ticketmaster experienced. They took a big hit as 40,000 of their customers' details were affected, card numbers stolen, personal details leaked. So they did, well, essentially get fined a hell of a lot of money for that. So because of this, to help in the future, what they did is that all payments now have to go through 3D Secure. So what we've just explained in the last slide, the process for 3D Secure, that happens on all of their transactions now. So when you're buying tickets, you have to put your password into the little banks box that pops up. But also, as an extra security measure, tickets cannot be delivered to an address that's different to the billing address on that card. So that's how they're trying to combat fraud and chargebacks for their business. So it's just a bit of an example that you might all be familiar with, have heard of in the news recently.
So one thing we've not touched on as of yet, and is huge to our business at Key IVR, is Abby mentioned at the start of the presentation that Key IVR as a company and the solutions that we provide are level 1 PCI compliant to the highest level that we could potentially be within our industry at this time. So anything we provide, whether it's a telephone platform, agent-assisted solution, or online payments, is rubber stamped against PCI compliance, which reduces PCI scope for our clients. Now, this is kind of backwards in terms of obviously how a card details are leaked to the outside world. So from over the past 5 years that I've been with the business, I've been into some companies and assessed what their payment processing procedures are, and I've seen some horror stories in terms of card details are written down on a card payment sheet, and an accounts lady will then go around and type those into a card terminal to process those payments, and to then collect the card payment sheets off the agents which are taking those payments. We've also seen where card details are written down on a piece of paper and processed individually by that agent at a later time. And we've also seen where card details are fully recorded on call recordings, which are easily accessible to a lot of people across that particular organisation. Now, we're not for any means saying that these types of people that work in these organisations are a rogue agent or a person that would take those details and sell them to the outside world, but we know it happens. And unfortunately, there is a risk against that when these card details are being taken in that manner. So what we do is that the reason why we have solutions in place for our telephone platform, which are PCI compliant, is it allows the customer to submit card details securely, but the card details remain on the customer side of the call. So nothing in terms of card data is spoken when having a conversation with an agent. It's entered into their telephone keypad, and nothing is sent out in any terms of reports by Key IVR externally. We don't store that information ourselves. It remains with the card issuing banks. We don't process any information and store that. It's completely out of our database across all of our solutions. So I think we've probably be able to pop on to the next slide, which is Abby's bread and butter on a daily basis in terms of her role.
So in terms of what we've just spoken about there, guys, in terms of protecting yourselves against chargebacks and also fraud, it's just something to bear in mind that if you do start taking payments in a more secure manner, or you do start putting security measures in place to protect against chargebacks, it's not just protecting yourselves and your customers. You can actually unlock savings with your gateway provider. So people like WorldPay, First Data, SagePay, who some of you might be using already, they're actually partners of ours as well. So our solutions have to work with these particular services in the background to process those card payments. But just so you guys know that if you do take payments in a more secure manner, you can unlock potential savings on your gateway fees, your acquiring fees, for doing so in a more secure way. So it's just something to think about, that if you've not already thought about it already, that you can potentially save yourself some money whilst not only protecting yourselves and your customers.
Okay, so something which I'm sure everybody's aware of, especially obviously in terms of card payments online, is PSD2. So as a company, Key IVR are PSD2 ready across the 44 gateways and acquirers that we work with. But in terms of what it is we have constant conversations with our customers to try and prepare for this. Now, unfortunately, PSD2 has been delayed for the next 18 months, which we had an idea that was going to happen, as a very minimal correspondence from relevant parties that we work with in regards to this. But essentially, the reason why this has been put in place is we touched on earlier, 3D secure payments is optional at the moment. It will make card payments online a lot more secure, because it will be mandatory that all card payments which are processed in an online environment, not over the phone, online only, will be processed and authenticated a lot more thoroughly. So this will, where we mentioned authorization codes coming back, one thing which is included in PSD2 is to verify yourselves. You can use your fingertips, and you can use retina recognition as part of this process, because if that was to be leaked to the outside world, the chances are that you wouldn't then be able to then process a payment in that means. So it really will crack down, and I think in terms of the UK finance stats that we've got, it'll be really interesting to see in 36 months' time what the difference is once this is in place, because I would imagine that there would be a significant reduction in the monetary value of card payments which have been processed fraudulently.
Okay, so thank you everyone for listening to that. If anyone wants to find out any more information about chargebacks or how to protect against card payment fraud, we have a lot of guides that we can provide. Obviously, we'll circulate this presentation, or CICM will circulate the presentation afterwards. There's a lot of links on there to different guides that we've created, so you can have a look at those and see how your organisation could start taking steps to reduce chargebacks or protect against card payment fraud. But if you visit our website, all the guides are on there as well. Or feel free to get in touch with CICM. Who'll be able to provide more information on our behalf. So has anybody got any questions?
Yeah, many thanks, Abby and Aaron. We've had a couple of questions come in. First one is, if I want to use 3D Secure for on-the-phone, high-risk transactions, does it matter what gateway I've got?
No, shouldn't do. All gateways as standard should allow 3D secure technology across. Are we able to find out who that is?
Yeah, we can send them the details, no problem. Lovely. Another question's come in. How does PSD2 change 3D Secure?
Yeah, so PSD2 will replace 3D Secure. So standard, what we call 3DS at the moment, is available across anyone that processes card details. PSD2 will also incorporate 3DS2. So there's an additional version of 3DS which will allow for extensive authentications when processing those payments.
Brilliant, lovely. Thanks, Aaron. If anybody else has any questions, please feel free to send them through. You can either contact Aaron and Abby on their contact details that they said on the screen, or you can email us at events@cicm.com. You'll also find a copy of this recording on our website. Thanks again, Abby and Aaron, and of course Key IVR, and thank you to all of you that have joined us today.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.